A wildfire burned here 3 months ago. Everything burned, but the fire showed something amazing. Old tile floors appeared under the ash, ancient stones, Greek letters cut in rock. For decades, experts fought about a lost city, Bethsaida. Maps changed, teams argued. Some said the city was gone forever. One wildfire changed everything. The flames showed proof that might end centuries of fighting, facts matching old texts, buildings telling forgotten stories. If these finds are real, the gospel gets its strongest proof yet. 2,000 years of hiding, now exposed. How did fire do what science could not? What does this mean? For history, for faith, for saving the past. The Sea of Galilee sits quiet. Northern Israel. Tall grass lines the shore. Small villages everywhere. Water hits against old stones. This peaceful place is in gospel stories. Jesus walked here. His followers fished these waters. Bible towns once stood on these shores, but one town was lost, Bethsaida. The name appears in ancient texts. A historian called it a city. The Gospels mention it many times. 3 followers came from there. Therefore, finding it mattered to millions. Experts searched for over 100 years. They dug different sites. They studied old maps. They argued, but no one agreed. Some said Et Tel, a big hill, easy to spot, lots of ruins. Others doubted that. Professor Mordecai Aviam led a small team. They worked at El Araj, years of digging. They found pottery. They drew maps of walls. Little money, big belief. This was the real Bethsaida. Rivals disagreed, strongly, jobs on the line. Therefore, any discovery would prove someone right, someone wrong, forever. Then the wildfire came. Hot summer day, flames ate grass and bushes. Smoke filled the sky. The heat was intense. Wildfires usually destroy old sites. They burn away dirt. They crack stones. They erase clues. Therefore, when the team heard about the fire, they felt alarm. Not excitement, alarm. They rushed there next morning. Ground still warm. Ash everywhere. Smoke smell heavy. But they saw something. Straight lines in dirt. Shapes. Nature doesn't make shapes like this. One person knelt down. She brushed away ash. Underneath was a coloured tile. Then another. Then more. Floor tiles. Hundreds of them. The fire burned away centuries of soil. It showed a floor no one knew existed. Therefore, disaster became opportunity. But opportunity came with danger. Exposed ruins decay fast. Rain erodes them. Wind damages them. People steal. They had to act. Now. The team called everyone. Volunteers arrived. Villagers helped. Students rushed from schools. But they faced a choice. Slow digging takes years. It saves details. Records everything right. They didn't have years. They had days. Therefore, emergency saving. Save important pieces first. Write down what they could. Protect what matters most. Drones flew overhead. Cameras recorded everything. Team worked in shifts. Local shepherds watched. Christian pilgrims came. Muslim villagers offered water. Jewish experts observed. Everyone sensed something big, but problems mounted. Papers needed, money short. Materials had to be ordered. Rain coming soon. Therefore, the team had to pick. Which stones to save, which areas to protect, which samples first. Every choice mattered. Every choice could lose facts forever. One team member said later something important. We study old things, not firefighters, but we had to act like firefighters to rescue history. First samples went to labs immediately. Pottery pieces, cement chunks, charcoal for dating. Early results suggested old, very old, maybe the right time, but early results left room for doubt. Rivals would need more proof. Critics would demand better facts. The world would ask hard questions. Therefore, First samples would either confirm years of theory or hand opponents weapons. The sun set that first day. The team stood in blackened field, surrounded by old stones, exhausted, covered in ash, uncertain. One person touched a tile, gently. The fire wrecked the brush, but what it showed, it changed the talk. They had hours to decide which stones to save. Their next choices would decide how history remembers this. Breakthrough or mistake. The debate over Bethsaida went back decades. Early travellers came in the 1800s. Christian pilgrims from Europe. They searched for biblical sites. They read old texts, tried to match them with real places. A historian wrote about Bethsaida almost 2,000 years ago. He called it a city near the Jordan River, expanded and renamed. But he wrote so long ago, rivers change course, landscapes shift, mud builds up. Therefore, experts disagreed about where to look. Two main sites emerged in the 20th century. Et Tel, a large hill inland. El Araj, closer to shore. Et Tel supporters had strong arguments. The hill was big, easy to see. Ancient cities sat on high ground. Digging found Iron Age remains. But Et Tel lacked something important. Old churches. Early Christians built churches at holy sites. They marked apostle places. Et Tel had no church remains, not from that time. Therefore, some experts doubted. Was it the apostle Bethsaida? The El Araj team believed their site fit better, closer to water, right height, in the floodplain, where fishing villages belonged, but less money, smaller digging, less published facts. Therefore, rivals dismissed their claims. The expert world favoured Et Tel. Now the fire exposed new proof at El Araj, proof that could change everything. Quick saving recovered pottery first, hundreds of pieces, different styles, different times. Lab workers sorted by type. Early checks suggested late Roman layers, maybe Old Church time too. The styles matched early Christian pilgrimage timeframe, but critics raised objections immediately. Those layers could be later building, pilgrims making churches centuries after Jesus, not proof of the original town. Therefore, the team needed more, something directly tied to apostle time. They sent samples for testing, carbon dating, clay tests, chemical checks. Each test cost money, each took time. Meanwhile, something else caught attention. A carved stone piece from the rubble. Greek letters visible on one side. Partial words. The stone was broken, burned around edges. One expert looked at it carefully. The letters looked like Petros, the Greek name for Peter. If true, this changed everything. Peter was a follower. He came from Bethsaida. A church dedicated to Peter here would prove identity. Therefore, the piece became critical, but the reading wasn't certain. Stone damaged, context disturbed by fire. Other experts needed to check. The team took photos from every angle, made drawings, sent images worldwide. Then someone leaked the news. A photo appeared online. Bethsaida found, read the headline. Peter's name on ancient stone. The post went viral. Thousands shared. News outlets picked it up. Religious websites exploded. But the team hadn't confirmed anything, hadn't checked the reading, hadn't published. Therefore, immediate pressure from all sides. Pilgrims wanted to visit. Donors offered money. Schools requested access. Officials called for reports. But rival experts pushed back hard. They demanded proof, questioned methods, called claims too early. One expert said publicly something harsh. You can't base a claim on a burned rock. Another expert disputed the reading entirely. The letters could be anything. Seeing Petros was wishful thinking. Therefore, the field split. Overnight, local authorities demanded better security. Treasure hunters might come. Thieves could steal. The site needed protection, but protection required money, papers, red tape, all things taking time. The teams set up temporary barriers, hired local guards. They asked on social media for emergency money. Donations came in. Volunteers offered help. But attention brought problems too. Every move was watched, every statement checked, every claim picked apart. One team member said quietly something true. "If that piece really reads Petros, everyone will look at this differently." A rival expert responded in print. "If it doesn't, this team loses all trust." The stakes couldn't be higher. Therefore, the digging became a race for backup proof. Against weather and decay, a race to prove claims. Before critics tore them down, they had a word on stone, they had a clock on ruins. Now they needed facts. Facts no one could dispute. The next phase would require every tool science had. Science checking began. Immediately. Samples went to 3 different labs. One in Israel, one in Germany, one in the United States. Independent testing would prevent bias claims. The goal was simple. Date the site right, prove layers matched right times, show facts couldn't be explained away. Carbon-14 testing measures radioactive decay in old material, charcoal from ancient fires, seeds in cement, bone pieces. But C14 gives ranges, not exact dates. A sample might date to 1st century plus or minus 50 years. That's a 100-year window, therefore multiple types of facts needed. Coming together on same answer. Heat testing checked pottery. This method measures when clay was last heated, when a pot was fired. Dirt science looked at soil structure. Layers build in predictable patterns. Disturbances show clearly under microscopes. All these tests together would build a timeline, a science case that rivals couldn't dismiss easily. But tests take time, weeks, sometimes months. Therefore, the field team focused on now, what they could see: buildings, patterns, physical facts at surface. The tile floors became centre of attention. Specialists flew in from Italy and Greece, experts who studied old floor art. They looked at every detail. Floor tiles are small cubes, coloured stone or glass. Artists arranged them into pictures. The tiles at El Araj showed specific pictures: fishing scenes, nets, boats. Images tied to Galilee's fishing culture. Christian symbols appeared too: a cross pattern, vine leaves, designs common in old churches. But similar pictures appeared at many sites, across centuries, across the region. Therefore, specialists looked deeper, at specific features, at subtle details. They found borders, frames around certain panels. These often contained donor words, names of people who paid for floor. Direction mattered too. Church floors face specific directions. Main area points east, entrance faces west. Not random. One specialist measured carefully. This floor follows church rules. It's definitely a church. But churches could be any age, built for centuries after Jesus. Therefore, they needed more context. The buildings told their own story. Foundation line suggested church plan, long rectangle building. Columns down sides, raised platform at one end. Column drums lay in rubble. Stone cylinders that once held up roof. Carved tops with simple designs sat nearby. Building style matched public Christian structures from a specific time, late Roman into Old Church time, around 300 to 500 AD. But here was the critical question. Was this church built on top of something older? Did earlier structures lie beneath? Therefore, they dug test holes, carefully. Going down below church floor, looking for earlier living, they found it. Beneath that tile floor were older walls, different building methods, different pottery styles in soil. This lower level dated to earlier time, maybe 1st century, maybe the original village. Therefore, The church was built on top of original town, just like pilgrims would do. They built churches where holy events happened. But weather threatened everything. Regional forecast showed rain coming, heavy rain. Exposed ruins couldn't survive downpour. Water would seep in. Freeze-thaw would crack tiles. Colours would fade. Workers rushed to protect fragile areas. Special fabrics, chemical helpers, temporary shelters. But protection cost money, lots of money, more than planned. Therefore, they couldn't protect everything. They had to choose. Writing area got priority. Best saved tile floors. Building features proving type. Other sections had to wait. It hurt to leave anything exposed, but no choice. Then came the breakthrough. Under a fallen column base, workers found something. They were clearing debris, carefully, moving stone pieces one by one. One worker stopped, called others over. They looked. Another writing, partially intact, Greek letters cut in stone. The text included this: "To Petru, of Peter." The room went silent. This was different from first piece, clearer, better saved, better context. One worker whispered something. There, a name. But even this had problems. Writing was broken, only part of longer text. The word Peter could be common name, or honour title, or dedication. Therefore, experts had to check, cross-check against other writings, study letter forms and style. If writing truly tied church to Peter the Apostle, effects would be enormous. But first, it had to face scrutiny, the toughest experts could provide. Data gathering began. In earnest. The lead team put everything together: radiocarbon results, pottery types, cement chemistry, tile checks, building plans, writing photographs. They wrote an interim report, 40 pages, dense science detail, charts and graphs, site maps, chemical data. But putting together meant choosing. What to include, what to stress, how to frame uncertain facts. Therefore, outside experts needed access, independent access. The team organised remote labs. They sent samples to experts they'd never worked with, asked for blind peer review. This would take months, properly. But they didn't have months. A press teaser leaked to national news outlets. Someone on team told a journalist, or someone close to it. The headline read this: Bethsaida confirmed Apostle Peter's church found. The article overstated facts, made claims team hadn't checked, suggested certainty where only probability existed. But the public didn't know that. Readers saw confirmed, believed it was definite. Therefore, media pressure exploded. Overnight, news crews arrived at site. Reporters camped outside research office. Producers requested exclusive interviews. Religious networks covered it big. Christian channels showed animation rebuilds. Jewish programs debated effects. Muslim commentators discussed shared heritage. The team tried to walk back overstated claims. They issued careful statements, said possible and suggestive instead of confirmed. But careful language doesn't make headlines. The viral story had its own momentum now. Therefore, opponents organised. In response, ETTEL supporters published fast responses. They highlighted broken writings, questioned whether fire disturbance contaminated site, demanded full data transparency. One prominent critic wrote something important. We must not be seduced by headlines. Old site study requires patience. Tough peer review. Another stated bluntly, show us the dirt layers or withdraw the claims. The public became split. Believers wanted it true. Doubters insisted on caution. Each side had champions. Political actors sensed opportunity too. Tourism brings money. Heritage sites bring prestige. A confirmed biblical location brings world attention. Government ministers began making inquiries. They wanted reports, asked about UNESCO World Heritage Tag. discussed money plans. But official involvement complicated everything. Publishing rules changed, review boards formed, legal things emerged. Therefore, the team faced pressure from every direction. Then nature struck. Overnight storms rolled in, heavy rain pounded the site, wind tore temporary shelters, lightning flashed across blackened hills. Team rushed to site at dawn. Water had pooled on tile floors. Mud washed over protected areas. Some tiles had loosened. Workers worked frantically. They pumped water away, fixed shelters, wrote down damage. But in the chaos, something happened. A small surface context got disturbed. A tiny coin lying loose. It fell into churned mud. Exact find spot lost. To the team, minor loss. One coin among thousands. But to critics, ammunition. Contaminated context, they declared. How much else did they lose? How can we trust their findings? Therefore, the team's trust faced crisis. Its first real crisis. They issued detailed reports of damage, photographed everything, explained exactly what was lost, what was saved. But doubt, once planted, grows easily. Then came unexpected support. An independent expert published an early peer note. She specialised in Old Greek writings, had studied photographs carefully. Of the Peter writing, her conclusion: the letter forms were consistent with late Old Church time dedication practices. Style matched other church writings, referencing apostles. Language fit the pattern. She wrote something careful but important. While not definite alone, this writing strongly supports identification as an apostolic memorial church. Her credentials were perfect, analysis thorough, support carried weight. But another respected expert immediately published rebuttal. He argued reading was uncertain, other readings possible. Old letter study alone couldn't prove anything. Therefore, even expert opinions split along lines. The debate moved into high gear. Letters circulated in professional journals, conference panels organised, graduate students chose sides for dissertations. The whole world seemed to watch now. Religious leaders made careful statements. A Jewish rabbi said something measured. "We watch with interest, but remain cautious." A Christian bishop called it worthy of prayerful reflection. A Muslim expert urged respect for shared heritage. But privately, many felt the stakes, deeply. If Bethsaida was confirmed, faith stories gained geographic reality, sacred texts connected to physical places. One thing was certain now: the answer wouldn't come from single fact. It would require coming together. Multiple lines of proof, independent backup, and one last piece of physical fact might provide exactly that. The team returned to a specific hole. The tile floor plan suggested something. Beneath the church, an earlier foundation, maybe the original village. This was last chance. Find foundational facts. Prove first century living. Connect all dots completely. But the hole was waterlogged from recent storms, fragile, dangerous to dig. Therefore, micro-digging methods, tiny tools, slow brushwork, every grain written down, 3 days of painstaking work. Then, beneath packed cement and stone collapse, they found it. A sealed cavity, undisturbed for centuries. Inside the cavity, a cluster of objects, ancient coins, animal bones, a sealed pottery jar. The coins were first clue. Team cleaned them gently, photographed, identified, old Jewish period coins, from Jewish dynasty that ruled before Roman taking. Some dated to 1st century BC, others to early 1st century AD. These were exactly right time frame, the period when Bethsaida flourished as a fishing village, but coins could travel, could be put down later, could be mixed in from upper layers. Therefore, they looked at dirt layers very carefully. The cavity was sealed, cement above hadn't been disturbed, Soil layers were clean, no signs of later mixing. The animal bones told another story, fish bones mostly. Tilapia, catfish, species from Sea of Galilee. But also mammal bones. Study showed sheep and goats. Butchering patterns followed Jewish dietary law, specific cuts, specific disposal methods. This suggested Jewish fishing community, exactly what historical sources described. But most important find was pottery jar, still sealed with hardened clay. Contents unknown. Workers debated how to open it. X-rays showed something inside. Metal, probably. Shape suggested plaque or sheet. They decided to open in controlled conditions, in the lab, with witnesses, recording everything. The seal cracked, clay dust fell away. Inside was folded lead plaque. Lead was used in ancient times for important documents, curse tablets, property records, foundation deposits. They unfolded it carefully, millimetre by millimetre. Metal was corroded but intact. Greek text appeared, faint but readable, several lines. The expert leaned close, photographed it, traced letters, consulted references. Then she looked up, her face pale. The text used word oikos, house, and a phrase translating to of the apostles, or apostolic house. Full meaning uncertain. Ancient Greek can be unclear, but terms matched historical descriptions of apostolic memorial sites. Therefore, this plaque might be foundation deposit, placed when church was built, marking it as memorial to apostles. If confirmed, strongest fact yet. But confirmation required old writing dating. Comparing writing style to other dated texts, checking lead makeup, checking context one more time. Team sent plaque to specialist. In Germany, she dated hundreds of similar texts. Her word would be trusted. Meanwhile, public pressure reached new heights. Religious authorities requested immediate site protection. They wanted UNESCO tag, called for world oversight. Government officials saw tourism potential. They discussed visitor centres, access roads, economic development. But rival teams accused project of being church-led, of confirmation bias, of pushing religious story. One doubter wrote harshly, "They're finding what they want to find. This isn't science, it's wishful thinking." Therefore, team faced hardest test. Prove findings stood up to toughest scrutiny, or watch reputation collapse. A formal world panel was proposed. Independent experts, multiple institutions, blind review of all data. Team agreed immediately. They wanted independent validation, had nothing to hide. They provided raw data, lab reports, photographs, dirt layer drawings, everything they had. The panel assembled quietly. 12 experts, old site experts, letter experts, protection experts, rock experts. They reviewed materials for 6 weeks, asked questions, requested additional tests, debated readings. Finally, new lab results came back. Foundation cache dated to late 1st century. Dirt layers were clean. Context was secure. The coins, bones, and plaque came from same period, same deposit, all placed when earlier structures were built. Therefore, multiple independent lines came together. This site had 1st century living, by Jewish fishing community, later remembered with church. Dedicated to apostolic memory. One scientist said quietly to camera, "No single artifact proves everything, but multiple independent threads knit same story." A worker touched plaque gently. Her voice broke slightly. "It's like someone closed a book 2,000 years ago and forgot where they put it, until fire showed us." Everything came together now. The data, the writings, the coins, the buildings. But the world demanded one more thing. Official expert confirmation. That no one could dispute. The panel prepared their report. 12 experts. Hundreds of pages, months of review, everything written down. cross-checked. They looked at dirt layer charts first. Soil layers tell stories. Each layer represents time. Each boundary represents change. The El Araj dirt layers showed clear sequences. Late Bronze Age at bottom. Iron Age above that. Persian period, Greek, Roman, Old Church time, clear progression, no major disturbances, no later mixing contaminating early layers. Fire damage was surface only, hadn't reached deep deposits. Therefore, foundation cache truly dated to 1st century. Next, the radiocarbon dates. Multiple samples, multiple labs, ranges overlapped consistently. Charcoal from lower walls, 50 BC to 50 AD, seeds in early cement, 10 AD to 70 AD, bone from cache, 20 AD to 60 AD. All dates clustered around right period, the time when Bethsaida flourished, when Jesus taught in Galilee. Coin types confirmed it. Old Jewish coins, early Roman provincial issues. Nothing later than 70 AD in early layers. Tile checks added more. Tile makeup matched old workshop practices. Pictures matched pilgrimage church patterns. Direction matched church rules. Buildings sealed the case. Church plan, apostolic dedication, built directly over earlier village structures. The plaque Old Letter Study came back final. Letter forms dated to late Old Church period. Language matched dedication writings. At other apostolic sites, phrase House of Apostles appeared in other contexts. Therefore, cumulative facts pointed one direction. This site had 1st century Jewish fishing village remains, later remembered by Old Church Pilgrimage Church, dedicated to apostolic memory. Everything fit, everything aligned, everything came together. The panel scheduled a press conference. News cameras filled the room. Reporters from 5 continents, religious observers, expert colleagues, government officials. Panel chair stood at podium, an elderly expert, 50 years of experience, respected worldwide. Known for careful judgments, conservative, she spoke slowly, deliberately, choosing words carefully. We have reviewed all available facts from El Araj digging, dirt layers, dating, buildings, writings, old things. Our review was thorough and independent. She paused. The room was silent. Our conclusion: the facts are compelling. This site very likely represents ancient city of Bethsaida. Coming together of multiple independent data lines supports this. Very likely, not definitely, not proven beyond doubt. Very likely. Scientists stay cautious. They leave room for error. They acknowledge uncertainty. But very likely from this panel meant something. It meant facts were strong, strong enough to shift expert agreement. The room erupted. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Religious observers wept openly. One journalist asked this: "Are you saying gospel accounts are accurate?" Panel chair shook her head. "We're saying old site facts support existence of a city at this location during relevant time period. We're saying old church here remembered apostolic connections. We cannot verify specific gospel events, only that the place existed." Another reporter asked about rival site. "What about Et Tel?" Et Tel has significant remains from other periods. This doesn't diminish its importance. But El Araj better fits geographic, historical, and old site profile for Bethsaida of Gospels. Panel's report went online immediately. 200 pages, all data, all checks, open access. Therefore, anyone could review facts themselves. Copying and rechecking were welcome. Science requires transparency. Digging team watched from side of room. Exhausted, emotional, vindicated. One team member said later something honest. "We didn't know if we were right. We believed it. We had clues, but we didn't know. Now we know." Religious communities responded worldwide. Churches held special services. Synagogues discussed findings. Pilgrimage groups planned visits. A local cleric said something moving. This makes stories we heard in church feel closer, more real, more touchable. But Panel reminded everyone, old sites are fragile. This exposure brings responsibility. Protection must come first. Governments moved quickly. Israel's Antiquities Authority announced protection measures. UNESCO began preliminary designation processes. World Heritage groups pledged money. Site would be saved, studied, protected for future generations. Team stood on hill one evening. Sun set over Sea of Galilee. Golden light touched old stones. One person knelt by tiles. She touched single tile gently. Tears ran down her face. "We found a city that had been waiting to be read," she said softly. Fire had revealed what time had hidden. Science had confirmed what faith remembered. History and belief met on this blackened hillside. Therefore, the world would never look at this place the same way. Ever again. Immediate aftermath began with protection. Tile floors needed protection, not temporary shelters. Permanent structures, climate control, professional care. World teams arrived. Italian workers specializing in tiles. German builders designing protective buildings. American engineers planning drainage systems. Work would cost millions, take years, require constant vigilance. But money came quickly now. Governments contributed. Donors gave generously. Heritage groups provided grants. Therefore, site became model of collaborative old site work. Multiple nations, multiple faiths, working together to protect shared history. Protection plan was complex. Some tile floors would stay in place, protected by buildings made over them. Visitors could see through glass floors. Others were too fragile. They needed lifting, careful removal of each tile, transport to labs, fixing, eventually display in museums. Village remains beneath church would be dug, slowly, properly, full writing down. No more emergency saving. This would take decade or more. Generations of students would study here. Hundreds of papers published. Data would fuel research for years. Therefore, fire that exposed site also launched long-term study. Expert publication began immediately. Team drafted articles for major journals, prepared detailed reports, shared data openly. But publication invited scrutiny. Other experts would recheck facts. Some would confirm. Others propose alternatives. This was good. Science thrives on debate, on testing, on questioning. Team welcomed it. One person said something important. "We want people to check our work. That's how we get closer to truth." Tourism became major concern. Pilgrims wanted to visit immediately. Tour companies planned packages. Hotels prepared for influx. But uncontrolled tourism destroys sites. Feet wear down old floors. Hands touch fragile walls. Crowds bring trash and damage. Therefore, authorities designed phased visitor program. Limited access at first. Small groups. Guided tours only. Strict rules. No touching. Stay on marked paths. Respect ruins. Eventually, maybe in 5 years, proper visitor centre would open. With exhibits, educational programs. But for now, protection came first. Local villagers watched these changes. Some welcomed attention, economic opportunities, jobs as guides, shops for souvenirs, restaurants for tourists. But others worried. Would Quiet Village become circus? Would developers push them out? Would homes be taken for parking lots? Therefore, authorities promised to include local voices. In planning, community input, fair compensation, respect for existing residents, cultural meaning rippled outward. Historians reflected on what discovery meant. For centuries, experts debated biblical geography. Some said texts were unreliable, that places were invented, that history couldn't be trusted. But sites like Bethsaida showed something different. Texts preserved real memories, real places, real geography. Therefore, confidence in historical sources grew, not blind faith, but measured trust, backed by facts. Faith communities responded in different ways. Some saw it as proof of beliefs, others saw it as interesting, but not essential to faith. One rabbi said wisely, something true. Old site work can't prove God, but it can show where our ancestors walked. That's valuable in its own way. A Christian pilgrim visiting said this. I always believed, but standing here, touching these stones, it makes story more real somehow. A historian cautioned everyone. Facts illuminate, they don't convert. Let old site work tell us about past. Let faith address questions old site work can't answer. Both could be true. History and faith could coexist, each respected, each valued, neither diminishing the other. Team returned to site on anniversary of the fire 1 year later. Blackened ground had begun to recover. Grass grew in patches. Wildflowers appeared. Nature heals itself. But exposed ruins told different story. They couldn't heal. They needed human care, human protection, human memory. Workers laid fresh protective covering over restored tile section. They worked carefully, respectfully. Each tile mattered. Lead expert stood nearby. She watched work, remembering that first morning. After fire, the shock, the fear, the wonder. A fire revealed a city, she said to visiting journalist. The rest is now our work. Journalist asked this. What's next? She smiled. Years of work, decades maybe. Every stone has story. Every layer teaches something. We've just begun. Sun rose over Sea of Galilee. Light touched old walls. Same light that touched them 2,000 years ago. History waits, patient, eternal, and so do we, protecting, studying, remembering. Past has a way of returning. Sometimes it needs little fire to be seen, but once seen, it becomes our responsibility, our heritage, our story. Therefore, we dig, we protect, we learn, and the stones, silent for centuries, finally speak again.